So already, like, every single YouTuber has jumped onto the new Blizzard post like a pack of vultures. So instead of just reporting the news to you guys, I'm going to deliver the news in symbolic pagan dancing. Just joking, obviously, but what I am trying to say is I'm going to focus more on critically commentating and discussing the information with a lot of speculative predictions for the future. And like I promised, we are going to have a nerdy and spicy drama section in this video covering some topics that haven't been touched on yet, which are quite interesting. I think the most interesting thing to discuss is how the devs have finally come clean about future raid sizes. Okay, so the next main raid in Phase 3 is actually going to be a 20-man, and then very weirdly, so is Molten Core later in Phase 4. And it's about time, to be honest. I mean, 10-man raiding is fun, don't get me wrong. It was always fun to have that option in Wrath Classic, you know, it gave you more ways to play the raid, and obviously a great route to gear up your alt. But could you imagine Wrath Classic with just 10-man raiding? I mean, it would feel pretty underwhelming. And that's honestly how a 10-man raid feels. It doesn't feel like an epic spectacle that we all love about World of Warcraft raiding. I don't think people fully realise just how good remote PC software has revolutionised in the past few years. Why am I mentioning this? Well, imagine if you could level your WoW characters and farm gold while sitting at a bus stop or waiting for the girlfriend that you don't have to put her makeup on. Well, these days you can so easily with the app or Sun Remote. It very easily connects to your PC. You can turn your PC on remotely also with your phone with the smart plug they provide. And then you can use the specially made World of Warcraft keyboard to control your character. I've been doing this while I've been on holiday, literally sat on a sun lounger, fishing up lot boxes on my hardcore character for gold. As you can see, it's very easy to get the World of Warcraft keyboard set up and it's totally customizable. I was able to easily control my character and press all of my keybinds while leveling up my hardcore character. There's a free trial where you can fully test the app's features, and if you end up liking the app, you can get the game version. It works both on Android and iOS, and you can find all the information in the description down below about getting that free 7-day trial. With it bumped up to 20-man, raids are going to feel more like an actual raid, and this is a very welcome change. Personally, I think they should keep 10-man raiding as an option. Just scanned through Reddit actually just before I finalised recording this video, and it seems like a lot of people also feel that way, because why don't we just have a 10-man mode with slightly less powerful loot, and then your 20-man mode has the best loot in the game? Could also be interesting if you added even more powerful bonus loot if you completed a raid without dying or within a certain amount of time, you know, just keep things a little spicy and interesting. But you see, the thing is, with a shift to 20-man raiding, SOD is going to lose a lot of its casual, friendly atmosphere. There will be a stronger need to join a raiding guild in order to complete the content. Okay, and there's a lot of people out there who just don't have a lot of time to play the game. Never mind commit to a raid schedule. I mean, committing to a raid schedule, you know, for people with hectic lives involving a high-stress job, and let's be honest, usually children, it can be very irritating. So I don't think Blizzard should totally scrap 10-man raiding, because it's a bit of a kick in the teeth for those very casual players who, if we're actually going to be honest, they do take up a majority of the player base. And what have they got to lose by creating more content from the same raid? Just have 10-man and 20-man mode. That's what I'm going to say. Now, the fact that Molten Core will be 20-man is interesting, because this might mean that we will see more of Vanilla's endgame raids turn into a 20-man. In my humble opinion, I think 20-man raiding is the perfect sweet spot between two things. One, difficulty, particularly when it comes to individual player responsibility. And two, cheesy mechanics and getting carried. Because let's be honest, in 40-man raiding, a lot of people do get carried, and normally since there's so many players in the raid, sorry, I just accidentally punched my mic there, you can cheese mechanics, consequently making the raid difficulty pretty redundant and boring in some cases. If you think about it, if they designed 40-man raids around a lot of individual player responsibility, then honestly the raid experience would probably just end up being too frustrating, because somehow a raid lead would have to coordinate and recruit 40 players with a brain, which is difficult, you know, obviously difficult in this day and age. This is why I think 20-man is the sweet spot, but I do understand the appeal of 40-man raiding. It always feels absolutely epic when you're in a raid of 40 other people. But I think raids like this should be reserved for more world boss content. You know, world bosses are designed to be absolutely zerged by hundreds of players, and that's how it should be, because they normally have fairly basic mechanics. The only problem with vanilla WoW world boss design is that it's terrible, because the raid bosses are so limited. I honestly think they should be a little bit more generous with the world boss spawn time, and have it spawn on a clock like the World PvP event, like every 3 hours on your server. Obviously, you know, world bosses create great social interactions, drama on your server, which is ultimately what vanilla is all about. I also think that they should add more world bosses into the game so people can still get that big 40-man raid itch, you know, get that scratch, because, you know, it is one of the defining features of vanilla. I mean, for years, people are always talking about having to raid as a 40-man, or, you know, the experience of it. But honestly, I think people who prefer 40-man raiding probably don't have to worry, because in the blue post, they kind of talk about how they want 40-man raids to remain in the game. But they don't want it to be in a situation where if you're in a 20-man, you feel behind a 40-man. So are they going to do something similar to Cataclysm, where it doesn't matter whether you're in a 20-man or a 40-man, you know, the raid will still drop the same loot, it will just drop more loot in the 40-man? Who knows? They use a phrase, soda and pretzel, to communicate how casual they want the raid to feel and how it should be approachable by pugs. I mean, I prefer the phrase beer and a burger. But, you know, what I'm trying to say is, yeah, they want the 40-mans to not have a huge gateway. They want them to be puggable. I think this really defines SOD's success, to be honest, the fact that the raid content is puggable and it is casual. And they really need to keep that a reality. If they enter a situation where the raids require a lot more coordination and they require you to join some kind of social hub like a guild in order to complete the raid, they are going to have a problem, because they are basically not appealing to the core audience. They go on to talk about how they want to make adjustments to the difficulty of the raids, as well as all of the loot at level 60. But they don't just want to mathematically bump up the difficulty like increase damage and health. Essentially, they're going to change and add more interesting mechanics to the raids. That's what they hint at anyway. It's probably, you know, 99% chance they are going to do that, and maybe already did in Season of Mastery. They express how it's difficult right now for players outside of the development process to fully understand what the endgame for SOD will truly be. Okay? This makes me feel quite positive. It gives me the impression that it'll be nothing like the original classic WoW, and it's going to be a lot more interesting. Especially as they say they want players to feel rewarded for a variety of different activities and playstyles. So who knows what that will entail? This is something that they are in open discussion about, and they are looking closely at player feedback to inform their future decisions. It's why I think it's very important for content creators to do community posts. I'm going to start doing some more of them myself, actually. Guys, if you found the video interesting so far, I would really appreciate it if you did subscribe to the channel. I mean, these videos do take a very long time to make. I mean, the script alone is 3,000 words. And I am really trying to make these news videos a little bit unique and interesting, so you're not bored out of your skull watching the same info over and over again from different creators. Now, the second bit of news is an absolute godsend. They are increasing the XP catch-up buff to 100%, and it's going to go all the way to level 40. And I'm presuming that, you know, when new phases come out, it's basically just going to be there, obviously until you max level and you don't need experience anymore. It's basically going to be like playing on a ×2 XP rate private server, which I have always said is the perfect leveling pace for vanilla. It's not too slow, it's not too fast. I'm very glad I hoarded off leveling an alt, to be honest, because this XP buff will begin on the next reset, March the 5th. This is probably one of the best things they could have done for the game, okay? Because, one, new players won't be put off starting this late in the game, and current players are going to quit less because they can still stay interested in the game for longer because, well, they can go and level an alt. And the prospect of leveling an alt now feels like a fun new adventure, rather than it being a massively boring slog in your head and therefore obviously discouraging you to even bother in the first place. I honestly think that they should increase it by 50% for every character you have at max level. They're also adding a little goal to every single quest when you aren't max level and reducing the cost of your mount by half. So now leveling an alt will be a great method of making gold, and you won't be absolutely bankrupt every time you get a new toon to level 40, because the current situation obviously is, you get your alt to level 40 and you have to buy your mount obviously because you need a mount, and then that's it. You literally have no gold left. Sometimes you don't even have enough gold when you get to level 40 because of all the training costs. But luckily, they're getting rid of that problem. For once, it does feel like Blizzard actually do have their heads screwed on when it comes to all of these seasonal discovery changes. They are essentially creating a product that is a unique, fun spin of a nostalgic vanilla version of World of Warcraft adapted to modern audiences, which is what, in the long run, I think is going to be the most successful approach and what people want the most. Because in reality, the core, World of Warcraft vanilla audience who are going to feel that nostalgia playing SOD, well, the reality is that they are all like 20 years older now and simply have less time to know live video games. There's also a number of class changes that have come with the latest reset, and it's totally muddled up and mutated the meta. It's actually quite interesting. But to be honest, as a Warlock player, I do feel a bit miffed because it feels like we're literally the only class in the game that's just getting no changes at the minute. It's a bit annoying because I wouldn't mind some changes, but to be fair, in PvE we are absolutely solid. We probably don't really need changes, but we are quite underpowered in PvP, and it'd be nice to see a little bit of a buff in that field. But obviously the problem with that is how do you achieve that without buffing them too much and making them too overpowered in raids? I do understand that. But anyway, enough moaning. First of all the armor values on certain bosses in Nomagon have been reduced, so obviously this will mean probably that warriors are going to end up a much stronger DPS and probably be the absolute gods by the end of the phase, because it always is the case. It's just a funny thing about Season Discovery. I mean, most players play a warrior. It is the most played class, which means whenever they are underperforming, there's going to be a lot of people crying about it, and then Blizzard will just have to cave in and buff them. I feel like if you're going to play a warrior, you're probably solid in Season of Discovery. They're always going to be strong. Hunters are also going to be pretty strong as well, because obviously primarily a physical DPS. But if you do look at DPS logs, more recent ones anyway, things are not what you would expect actually. We'll take a look at that later. Let's actually talk about these changes. So Druid have received a number of buffs. Well, healer Druids have anyway. Reduced mana cost on Life Bloom. Living Seed now heals for 50% instead of 30%, and now it blooms from non-periodic healing received in addition to damage taken. Nourish mana cost has been reduced, and then very interestingly, Moonkin is now way more functional. You can now cast certain restoration abilities that aren't heals without breaking the form. So, remove Curse, Abolish Poison, Innovate, actually combat res as well, and also the buff Mark of the Wild. So that's probably a massive quality of life change for people who do play balance. And also, if you have Fury of the Storm rune equipped, and obviously it does trigger that instant healing touch, it can now be castable in Moonkin form. So technically you can actually now heal in Moonkin form with that proc, and you can also choose to cast Nourish with it instead of healing touch now. And also Pharaoh Druid's got a bit of love. Lacerate crits will now trigger Primal Fury. Hunter got a little bit of a nerf. The damage buff with Dual Wield spec is no longer there on Raptor Strike. Doesn't even exist anymore. Mage's Chronostatic Preservation heal is now limited to 40 yards, or obviously 46 when talented. Paladin's Crusader Strike now exclusively just deals holy damage instead of physical damage, okay? And it does actually totally ignore armor as a consequence to that. And it's also now, despite all that, considered a melee attack, which means that when you're silenced, you will still be able to use it. Seal of a Martyr can no longer trigger Art of War, and it's no longer triggered also by weapon procs, which is a bit weird to be honest. I mean, why nerf Rep Paladin when they're literally the third worst DPS in the game right now? Seems a bit of a strange one to me. A Rogue's main gouge will now actually cause 3 combo points, and energy cost has been reduced by 15. So a little minor buff. But now for the most interesting changes, and that is for Shaman, okay, because they're getting buffed a lot with this patch. Okay, so first of all, Two-Handed Mastery increases attack power by 10%, and also 10% increased crit chance, and that buff is just given when you whack someone with a two-hander, okay? Spirit of the Alpha rune now has an extra effect. Basically, it originally was just a tanking buff that you put on yourself to increase your threat, but now if you're a DPS and you put it on the tank, it personally increases your attack power by 20%, okay? This is crazy because now, like, Shaman essentially have 30% more attack power, just as a given. And this is only going to get better with gear because it's just going to scale and scale as we also get more attack power. And a warrior's rallying cry now will also affect the whole raid instead of just a party. So overall, massive buff to physical DPSs, buffs to druid and PvP to make them more functional, and some serious big shaman buffs. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if shaman end up, knocking the warrior off a top spot, especially if you look at today's logs. In fact, let's do that right now. It's time to go to the ultra nerdy section of the video. So if we look at today's logs, in the upper 5% percentile, it depicts a very interesting story. So first of all, Fire Mage, Warlock and Melee Hunter are still dominating. Honestly, the main reason Fire Mage are topping right now, let's be honest, it is because they can cheese damage with a living bomb so easily, especially on a fight mechanical menagerie. But, if you do look at single target fights, you can see that they are more on an equal level to Warlock. But again, the most interesting class has to be the Shaman. Already with these changes today, they have crawled up to the 4th DPS spot. I mean, they are now borderline an S tier DPS. I mean, if you actually look at the more technical fights like Electrocutioner, they are in fact on top. They're totally on top ahead of all the other DPS. And then the 3rd spot on Crowd Pummeler, and then 2nd on the last boss, which is just mad. Like, where the hell has that come from? Honestly guys, it might be time to make a Shaman ult, because again, with that 30% attack power buff, they are only going to get better with more gear. Weirdly, the DPS priest has totally fallen off a cliff, unfortunately. The rogue and the warrior are climbing slightly. We'll have to look at the end of the week. I mean, a lot of people have totally written off the rogue this phase, but who knows? I mean, they did get a slight buff with the changes, and if they do scale with gear, maybe they'll at least be an A tier DPS and actually be able to get invited into groups. But what about some drama, guys? I did promise you a little bit of drama for these episodes. Well, Agrand has responded to the Stockades epidemic. Pretty much in every server right now, if you check Stockades on your /Hue, there's a number of bots in there farming gold, and obviously a lot of people are angry at Blizzard because it seems like such an obvious problem that they can fix. And obviously people are complaining about where are the GMs, where are the GMs? Well, the thing is, the fact that there are so many bots in Stockades right now is actually kind of a good thing. Obviously it's not a good thing, okay? Characteristically, categorically, it's not a good thing. But it could be worse. Agrand also does touch on this, but it basically means that other more lucrative farming methods, like for instance farming instances at higher level like SM or Alderman, are proving to be less lucrative because the bots are getting banned faster in those areas. And also, all of those open world methods. So basically what is happening is, and I can confirm this by talking to gold farmers myself, they are struggling to get to max level and start farming gold at max level and doing all the methods that you can do at max level without getting banned. And this is why so many are still in Stockades. Many of them still forced to farm in Stockades because although it is kind of a problem, that farm isn't as good, which means the gold farmers can't make as much gold per hour. In fact, a lot of people I've spoken to, they aren't actually farming instances at all anymore because you just get banned too quickly. Hence the new rise of the Warlock summoning bots. Guys, stop getting summoned by people selling summons in LFG chat. The majority of them are farming, gold farmers, and we are botters, and you are basically financially contributing to those people making loads of real world money. You're making the server economy worse by accepting those summons, and consequently, very likely, contributing to the world of real world crime, as we have discussed in my ST Vice series. Check out that playlist on my video if you want more information about that. If you look at the price of Alliance Gold compared to Horde Gold, Alliance is actually much cheaper, and it obviously is because of that Stockades method. It is now currently the most effective way of farming gold because of the ban climate. And overall, the cost of gold is getting more expensive, and this will only get better as the level cap increases. However, the XP buff, as we recently did discuss, with that implementing next week, obviously that does massively help out the bots. It might mean that they can make more gold at max level without getting banned. Okay, we're probably going to see a lot more bots flood onto the server next week when they introduce that XP buff, because they will see it as an opportunity to take, to exploit. I think what they need to do is basically just give that XP buff to either people who have already got max level on a toon, or someone who has an account older than 2 weeks, because obviously you don't want to not give that XP buff to new players, but you don't want to give it to the bots. So what is the compromise here? I mean, most people probably already have an account, okay, so they get that XP buff straight away. If there is generally a totally, new player to World of Warcraft, they can get that XP buff after 2 weeks, because it normally takes about 2 weeks for a bot account to get banned. And this way, it means that the bots don't benefit from that XP buff, okay? Because if they are benefiting from that XP buff, they are able to access more lucrative gold farming methods, which again, it is just going to ruin the economy even more. I think having that 2 week requirement would be very good at basically deterring bots that just a little bit more. And you basically, I mean, the goal is to just, with everything that you implement into the game, is to reduce the amount of gold per hour that the botters can farm. And this would be one of the very good ways that you could do that, which would be, in the long run, good for the server economies. Anyway guys, let me know what you think in the comment section. Before you head off though guys, I am actually making a little bit more videos on my second channel, mainly making content about the, the re-release of the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. I'm a massive fan of those games, and the video I uploaded there recently is actually doing quite well, so I think I'm going to do a few more. So check out the second channel, you've got a link to that in the description as always. Anyway, my name is Metagoblin, until the next video, ciao.